Hello friends again, welcome back to Shadows of Revenge. First at all, tell me, where are you from the world watching my video? This is a true story, so watch till end. My name is Jeff Collins. The house was still asleep when I went downstairs, the kind of quiet that usually feels sacred. It was just past 5 in the morning, that strange hour when night hasn't fully released its grip and morning hasn't yet made any promises. I told myself the tightness in my chest was normal. Father of the bride nerves. 30 years ago, I'd felt something similar before my own wedding. Anticipation wrapped in responsibility, pride threaded with fear. Indy's big day was 3 days away. Everything was changing. That was all it was. Or so I believed. The Colorado sunrise was beginning to stretch across the sky, brushing the windows with pale gold as I padded toward the kitchen in my slippers. I want a coffee. Just coffee. Something familiar before the chaos of fittings, schedules, and last-minute decisions swallowed the house. The door was ajar. That caught my attention. Lionel was usually meticulous about closing doors, even inside the house. I paused, listening. There were voices. Soft. Close. A laugh, low, intimate. For a heartbeat, I smiled to myself, assuming it was Indy. She'd been dropping by early lately, excited, restless, wanted to be involved in every detail. I imagined mother and daughter whispering over seating charts, sharing secrets the way they always had. I pushed the door open. The world didn't explode. It didn't make a sound. It simply stopped. Lionel was pressed against the granite island, her silk robe slipping from her shoulders as if gravity itself had betrayed her. Drew's hands were in her hair, his body close to hers in a way that had nothing to do with comfort or familiarity. They were kissing, slow, practiced, intimate, not the accidental closeness of people who crossed a line without meaning to. This was the kiss of people who had crossed it many times before. I stood there, 10 feet away, invisible. The mug I'd been reaching for hovered uselessly in my hand. My lungs refused to work properly. My heart slammed against my ribs so violently I was certain they'd hear it. But they didn't. They were too absorbed in each other, too busy dismantling the life I thought we'd built together. 26 years. That's how long Lina and I had been married. 26 years of shared mornings, shared losses, shared victories. 26 years of believing I knew the woman beside me. And there she was, wrapped around the 28-year-old man who was supposed to marry our daughter in 3 days. Some instinct, maybe cowardice, maybe survival, took over. I didn't confront them. I didn't shout or demand explanations. I backed away, quietly, my hand shaking so badly I had to steady myself against the doorframe. They never saw me. They never knew their secret had already died. By the time I reached my home office, the shock gave way to something sharper, colder. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a double betrayal, so precise it felt engineered. How long had it been happening? Every book club, night that ran late. Every time Drew stayed for dinner, charming us with stories about his law firm, his future plans, the new clothes, the expensive lingerie Lina said was for herself. Confidence, she called it. I believed her. God, I had been blind. I sat at my desk, staring at nothing, knowing one thing with painful clarity. Indy had to know. Whatever it cost me, she deserved the truth before she tied her life to a man capable of this. I found her later that morning in the living room, sunlight pooling around her as she hovered over seating charts and floral samples. She looked radiant, happy in a way that made my chest ache. She had Lina's green eyes, the same ones that had undone me 3 decades earlier, the same ones that had looked at me with affection my entire life. I asked her if we could talk privately. She didn't look up right away. "Dad, I'm busy," she said, her tone sharp with stress. "There are 3 days left." She dismissed her wedding planner with a wave and turned to me, those green eyes suddenly focused, impatient. "What is it? Is this about Drew?" The room felt colder. I struggled to find words that didn't feel like knives. How do you tell your child that the person she loves is betraying her with the person who raised her? I tried anyway. Carefully. Gently. I told her there were things she didn't know. Things that mattered. She stopped me mid-sentence. Her hand came up like a wall. "Stop," she said. "Just stop." When I mentioned what I'd seen that morning, she exploded. She jumped to her feet, anger flushing her face, disbelief twisting her features. She accused me of lying, of jealousy. of trying to sabotage her happiness because I couldn't let go of the little girl she used to be. Every word felt like a blow. I tried to explain. I begged her to listen. She didn't hear any of it. "If you can't support my marriage," she said, her voice shaking with fury, "then don't come to the wedding." The sentence landed with finality. My own daughter, choosing illusion over the father who had spent his life protecting her. She stormed out, leaving me standing alone among the trappings of celebration. For the first time in 50 years, I understood what true isolation felt like. I sat in my office afterward, hours passing unnoticed, replaying the kitchen scene until it felt etched behind my eyes. The knock came at 9 sharp, 3 soft taps that somehow carried concern. Blake stepped inside, taking in my unshaven face, the untouched coffee, the way I seemed to have aged overnight. He didn't accept my excuses. He never had. When he said he'd noticed something between Lina and Drew, the relief was almost dizzying. I wasn't insane. I wasn't imagining things. Someone else had seen the cracks forming. When he told me he believed me, truly believed me, something inside my chest loosened for the first time that day. The child I hadn't expected to stand beside me was the only one who did. As he spoke about gathering evidence, about being careful, I realized the morning had already taken everything I thought I knew about my family. The question wasn't whether I wanted the truth anymore. It was whether I was strong enough to survive what the truth was about to take from me next. Blake didn't rush me. He sat across from my desk the way he used to sit at the kitchen table as a teenager, elbows braced, eyes steady, waiting until I could breathe again. Outside my office window, the house looked the same, manicured lawn, white trim, the illusion of stability intact. Inside, everything I thought was solid had already collapsed. "Dad," he said finally, voice low, deliberate, "Indy won't listen to suspicions. Not from you. Not now." I hated that he was right. Indy had always been stubborn, especially when she believed she was being protected from herself. In her mind, I wasn't a father warning her of danger. I was an obstacle standing between her and the life she'd planned. Blake leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "We need proof," he continued. "The kind that can't be explained away. The kind that forces the truth into the open." The word proof carried weight. Evidence meant intention. It meant we were stepping beyond doubt and into consequences. Once there, nothing could be taken back. I looked at the young man across from me, the son I'd raised since he was 3 years old, the boy who'd scrape his knees in our driveway, who'd sat in this very chair doing homework while I worked late. Dragging him into this felt wrong, but so did doing nothing. Blake met my hesitation with calm resolve. "I know where they meet," he said. "Tuesdays and Fridays. Same time, same routine." The pattern sickened me. The precision of it. While I've been trusting my wife, paying for our daughter's wedding, believing in the life we shared, Lina and Drew had been building something in the margins, hidden in schedules, disguised as errands. We agreed to move carefully, quietly. If we were wrong, the damage would be irreversible. If we were right, the damage already existed. We'd just be uncovering it. 2 days before the wedding, we sat in my Honda across from the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Denver, watching the revolving doors swallow and release strangers. Blake pointed without drama when the silver BMW pulled into valet. Drew stepped out like he owned the sidewalk, confident, polished, entirely unaware that the performance was nearing its end. Lina arrived exactly 15 minutes later in her white Lexus, stepping out in a red dress I'd never seen before. It clung to her in a way that wasn't meant for me. Watching her walk toward the hotel, knowing what she was walking toward, hurt more than the morning in the kitchen. That moment had been shock. This was confirmation. We waited. 2 hours passed like slow torture. Blake kept the camera trained, documenting entrances and exits, hands brushing backs, glances that lingered just a second too long. When they emerged, they played their parts well, distance maintained, expressions neutral. To anyone else, they were just 2 professionals leaving a meeting. But the camera caught the truth. Drew's hand at Lina's back, the way she leaned into him, the smile she hadn't worn for me in years. We followed at a distance as they walked to a restaurant, settling into a booth with the ease of people who had done this many times before. Through the window, Blake captured everything. And then it happened. Drew reached across the table, took Lina's hand, and kissed her. Not quickly, not discreetly. It was the kiss of people who believed they were safe. Blake lowered the camera, his jaw tight. Got it, he said. Multiple angles. I stared at the images on the display, my marriage reduced to pixels and timestamps. Proof I'd never wanted but desperately needed. As devastating as it was, a part of me felt grim relief. Indy would have to see it now. There would be no denying this. But Blake wasn't done. He zoomed in on something I'd barely noticed. A receipt Drew was signing. $300. For lunch. That doesn't make sense, Blake said quietly. I've eaten there. $70 maybe. That was when the second layer of betrayal revealed itself. Numbers don't lie. After 30 years in accounting, I knew when money didn't add up. Drew was a junior associate. His lifestyle, Rolex, Armani suits, five-star hotels, was impossible on a salary. That night, my office turned into a war room. Photos spread across the desk. Financial notes scribbled in margins. Blake worked his phone relentlessly, pulling salary data, firm reviews, client complaints. The picture sharpened fast. Morrison and Associates was under investigation. Trust funds. Missing money. Junior associates with access. Then Blake went quiet. Dad, he said, voice strained. There's something else. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I felt the shift immediately. The way the room seemed to tilt, the way my instincts warned me this truth would cut deeper than the rest. He spoke about the day Lyanna brought him home. About the story I believed for decades. About the lie underneath it. What he told me, he was Lyanna's biological son. The air left my lungs. I felt like I was drowning in memories that suddenly meant something else. The orphan nephew. The tragedy. The generosity I've been proud of. All of it built on a fabrication designed to hide an affair long before Drew ever entered our lives. Blake explained how he'd discovered the truth as a teenager. How Lyanna had begged him to keep it secret. How he'd agreed, not to protect her, but to protect me. Because to him, I was his father in every way that mattered. As the shock settled, something unexpected happened. The betrayal didn't change how I saw Blake. It clarified it. Biology hadn't made him my son. Loyalty had. Love had. And here he was now, standing beside me, choosing truth over the woman who gave birth to him. When I placed my hand on his shoulder and asked if he was with me to the end, his answer came without hesitation. Always. That was the moment I understood the real shape of family. Not the one we present to the world, but the one revealed when everything burns. And we weren't done uncovering what had been hidden. By the time dawn broke on the day of the wedding, sleep had become a stranger. The house was awake before the sun, but not with joy. It hummed with tension, with secrets pressing against walls that had already heard too much. My office looked nothing like a place where numbers once behaved themselves. Spreadsheets covered every surface. Photographs lay in careful order. Evidence stacked neatly, as if organization could somehow soften what it all meant. Blake sat across from me, scrolling through his phone, his expression tight with focus. He'd found more than we'd expected. Articles buried in legal forums. Complaints dismissed as misunderstandings. Patterns that only made sense when you knew what to look for. Morrison and Associates wasn't just sloppy. It was bleeding money, and Drew Parker's name kept surfacing in the shadows. When the article about the investigation appeared on Blake's screen, something cold settled into my chest. Client trust funds. Missing balances. $250,000, potentially gone. This wasn't recklessness. It was calculated. Drew hadn't just betrayed Indy emotionally. He'd built his affair on stolen money, siphoning from people who trusted him with their futures. We didn't argue about what to do next. There was no dramatic debate. The decision had already been made the moment we realized how far this went. Justice wasn't optional anymore. It was necessary. The phone rang at 8 sharp. An unfamiliar Denver number. Detective Sarah Martinez. Economic Crimes Unit. Her voice was calm, professional, carrying the weight of systems that moved slowly but deliberately. When she told us they'd opened an investigation based on our tip, my heart began to race. Not with fear, but with the knowledge that this was real now. Official. I put the call on speaker so Blake could hear. The numbers were worse than we'd thought. 18 months of embezzlement. Wire fraud. False billing. Enough evidence to warrant serious charges. But timing was the enemy. Warrants took time. Paperwork took time. And in 8 hours, my daughter was supposed to marry a man who would destroy her life. When I told the detective where Drew would be that afternoon, There was a pause on the line. Then a promise. Not of certainty, but of effort. If the evidence held, they'd be there. By the book. In public. After the call ended, Blake and I stood in the kitchen. The same kitchen where this nightmare had begun. The island still gleamed. The coffee machine still hummed. Nothing about the space acknowledged the wreckage it had witnessed. Once we do this, Blake said quietly, there's no going back. I thought of Indy at the salon, laughing with her bridesmaids, believing the worst thing she'd face that day would be nerves. I thought of the guests arriving with gifts and expectations. I thought of the life I'd lived for 26 years, trusting a woman who had never been who she claimed to be. They made their choices, I said. I'm just refusing to cover for them. 2 hours before the ceremony, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, fighting with my black tie. My hands wouldn't steady, not from fear of confrontation, but from grief. Blake stepped in behind me and took over, his movement sure. You taught me this, he said. Remember? I did. I remembered everything. The years, the lies hidden among them. When doubt crept in, when I wondered if there was a quieter way, a way that spared Indy public humiliation, Blake didn't let me retreat. You're not ruining her day, he said firmly. You're stopping a lifetime of lies. Indy arrived shortly after, radiant and sharp-edged all at once. She laid out her rules with clinical precision. No drama, no accusations. Smile. Be the father she needed for the performance of her happiness. Her words hurt more than she knew. But I agreed, not because I intended to stay silent, but because I needed her to walk into that ceremony believing she was safe. Outside, Drew played his role flawlessly. Expensive tuxedo, easy smile, handshakes and laughter. He looked like every photograph of success Indy had ever dreamed of standing beside. Watching him, I understood how easily people are fooled by confidence. At exactly 4 o'clock, under the arch I'd helped build, the officiant welcomed the guests. The words were familiar, comforting, rehearsed. Then came the moment everyone expects to pass without incident. If anyone has reason, these two should not be joined. I stood. The gas from the crowd rolled through the backyard like a physical wave. Drew's face drained of color. Lina froze in the front row, eyes wide with terror. Indy turned toward me, fury and confusion colliding in her expression. I object, I said, my voice carrying farther than I expected. What followed was chaos. Phones lifted. Murmurs swelled. I connected my phone to the speaker system and held it up for all to see. The image of Drew and Lina kissing filled the screen, timestamp unmistakable. I spoke steadily, laying out the truth. The affair, the money, the lies. Drew tried to deny it, his words tangling over themselves. But the arrival of Detective Martinez ended any illusion of control he had left. When the handcuffs closed around his wrists, the sound echoed in the stunned silence. The perfect groom reduced to a criminal in front of 200 witnesses. But the reckoning wasn't finished. I turned to Lina, and then to the crowd, and revealed the lie she'd carried for 26 years. Blake stepped forward, calm amid the storm, claiming me as his father with more dignity than anyone else present. Indy looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Not as an obstacle, not as a jealous parent, but as the man who had just torn apart a wedding to save her life. Is it true? She whispered. I nodded, and when she took my hand, apologizing through tears, I knew that whatever this day cost us, it had given her something far more valuable than a ceremony built on lies. The guests would remember this wedding forever. But for Indy, this was the day her life was saved. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, the morning light felt different. It wasn't brighter. It wasn't warmer. It was honest. Sunlight spilled through the windows of my small townhouse in Littleton, touching countertops that had never heard shouting, never witnessed betrayal, never held secrets heavy enough to poison a family. The space was modest compared to the Highlands ranch house I'd sold, the house that had carried 26 years of lies in its walls. But this one breathed easier. So did I. The smell of pancakes filled the kitchen. Blake stood at the stove, flipping them with practiced ease, the kind of comfort that comes from repetition and peace rather than routine and denial. He'd grown into this space like it had always belonged to him. Maybe it had. Maybe this was where we were always meant to land once the truth stripped everything else away. Blueberries, he asked without turning around. Always, I said, lifting my coffee mug. The coffee tasted better here. I didn't know if it was the brand or the absence of betrayal, but it no longer felt like something I needed to survive the day. It felt like something I enjoyed. Indy was coming over. She called the night before, her voice light but careful, the way it had become since the wedding. Healing had taken time. Therapy had taken honesty. Apologies had taken humility from both of us. But the anger was gone now, replaced by something sturdier. Trust rebuilt from the ground up. She's bringing him, Blake said with a grin. I smiled despite myself. The mysterious Tom. 6 months ago, I couldn't imagine Indy trusting anyone again. I couldn't imagine her laughing without suspicion, loving without fear. But pain has a strange way of sharpening discernment. She no longer confused charm with character. She no longer equated gifts with devotion. The doorbell rang. Blake wiped his hands on a towel and nodded toward the door. That'll be them. When I opened it, Indy stood there in a simple dress. No performance, no armor. She looked lighter. Beside her was a man in his early 30s, tall, earnest, the kind of presence that didn't need to announce itself. His eyes met mine without calculation. His handshake was firm, unpretentious. Dad, Indy said, smiling. This is Tom Richardson. Tom, this is my father, Jeff. And my brother, Blake. Brother. The word still caught in my chest sometimes, but never painfully anymore. Tom stepped forward. Mr. Collins, it's really good to meet you. Indy talks about you a lot. All good things, I hope, I said. The best, he replied without hesitation. She told me what you did. About the wedding. About how you saved her from making the biggest mistake of her life. That takes courage. Indy squeezed his hand, then looked at me, really looked at me. There was no anger there now. No lingering doubt. Just gratitude and something close to reverence. I trust your judgment now, Dad, she said quietly. If you like him, then I know he's right for me. And if you don't, I promise I'll listen. That was the moment I knew we'd truly made it back to each other. I studied Tom carefully. A high school teacher. Volunteer at an animal shelter. Patient. Grounded. A man who didn't mistake control for love or secrecy for strength. I extended my hand again. Welcome to our family, I said. Thank you for loving my daughter the way she deserves. As we sat around the table, pancakes, syrup, laughter easing into the corners of the room, I thought about everything we'd lost. The old house, the marriage, the illusion of a perfect family. Lina had moved to Phoenix after the divorce. We hadn't spoken since the courtroom. Some silences don't need to be broken. Drew was serving his sentence. 4 years, restitution ordered, law license revoked. His future reduced to the consequences of his own choices. Blake had legally changed his last name to Collins. The paperwork had been a formality. The truth had already been lived. We'd started a small firm together, Collins and Associates Financial Services. Nothing flashy, just honest work for honest people, helping small business owners, families, people who still believe money could be managed without corruption. Blake handled the technology, the marketing, the future. I handled the numbers, the principles, the ethics. It was the most satisfying work of my life. On Sundays, Indy came over for dinner. No secrets, no careful avoidance. We talked about the past when it mattered, and about the future when it didn't need to be haunted. Sometimes we laughed at how close we'd come to losing each other. Sometimes we sat quietly, grateful we hadn't. So, Blake said, passing the syrup to Tom with a smirk, "What are your intentions with our sister?" Tom laughed, completely at ease. To love her, to support her dreams, and to never lie to her. Ever. I watch my children, both of them, biology be damned, welcome this man into our family. And I understood something that had taken betrayal to teach me. Family isn't built by blood. It's revealed by loyalty. Integrity isn't proven when life is comfortable. It's revealed when everything falls apart. Losing everything built on lies had felt like punishment at first. But it was a gift, because it forced us to rebuild on truth. And that foundation, quiet, unglamorous, unbreakable, was worth more than any wedding, any house, any illusion of perfection we'd ever lost. Sometimes the moments that destroy us are the ones that finally show us who we are.